Welcome back to Podcast Infinity. Give your brain a dose, grow smarter. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of friendship. We're going to be looking at how those bonds form, why they're so vital to our well-being, and even some of the surprising challenges they can present.
That's right.
And as always, if you want to explore the research that we're discussing, you can find all the links down in the description.
Yeah, what's really intriguing about this is that it goes far beyond, those surface level ideas we have about friendship. We're going to be looking at hard data, evolutionary biology, even a bit of genetics to understand the often hidden forces that play in our social connections.
Okay, I am hooked already. Let's start unpacking this, shall we? I'm particularly curious about this idea of a cognitive limit to friendship. Is there really a magic number of friends that our brains can handle?
There is, and it's called the Dunbar number, named after anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who really pioneered this research. It all started with his observations of primates' social groups. He found a strong correlation between the size of a primate's neocortex, that's the part of the brain responsible for higher level thinking, and the size of its social group.
So bigger brain, bigger friend group.
Exactly. And when he applied this research to humans, he came up with the number 150. This suggests that on average, humans can maintain stable social relationships with up to 150 people.
150, that's a pretty specific number. Is there any real world evidence to back that up?
There is. Dunbar looked at historical data from a variety of cultures, everything from ancient hunter-gatherer societies to modern military units, and found that this number consistently popped up. Even the average size of villages throughout history tends to hover around 150 people.
Oh, wow. That's pretty mind-blowing. But what about, those people who have thousands of followers on social media? Does that count toward their 150?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what the Dunbar number really represents. You see, it's not just about knowing people, it's about maintaining meaningful relationships. Yep. Those social media connections might be fun and stimulating, but they don't carry the same weight as the deeper, more intimate connections that Dunbar was studying.
So it's quality over quantity when it comes to friendship. Our inner circle matters more than a massive but superficial network.
Exactly. Dunbar even went a step further and broke down these meaningful relationships into concentric circles. He found that within our 150, we have layers of intimacy, with each layer representing a different level of closeness and investment.
Tell me more about these layers. I'm picturing those Russian nesting dolls right now.
It's a great analogy. The outermost layer representing the full 150 are those acquaintances you might invite to a party or a large gathering. Then we move into the circle of 50, which includes your good friends. The people you see and interact with regularly.
Okay, I see where this is going. So what about those truly close friends, the ones you can always count on?
They fall into the next layer, the circle of 15. These are your confidants, the people you trust with your secrets and vulnerabilities. And finally, we reach the innermost circle, which Dunbar calls the support clique.
Okay.
This group, typically made up of only 5 people, represents your absolute closest relationships, your family, your best friends, the people you would turn to in a crisis.
Wow. So even within our closest relationships, there's this hierarchy of intimacy. It's our brains are programmed to organize and prioritize our social connections.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And this hierarchical structure is actually rooted in our evolutionary history. If we think back to our early ancestors living in a dangerous and unpredictable world, those close social bonds weren't just a luxury. They were essential for survival.
So friendship wasn't just about, having someone to chat with around the campfire. It was about banding together for protection and support.
Exactly. And there's even scientific evidence that those social bonds can literally change our perception of the world. One study found that students who were asked to estimate the steepness of a hill perceived it as less steep when they were standing next to a friend compared to when they were alone.
That's wild. So just having a friend nearby can make challenges seem less daunting.
It's a powerful example of how social support can impact our mental and even physical state. And these evolutionary advantages translate into some tangible health benefits in the modern world.
Like what? Tell me more about these health benefits. I'm always up for a good reason to hang out with my friends.
Well, numerous studies have shown that people with strong social connections have lower blood pressure, reduced risk of heart disease, and even stronger immune systems. They're also less likely to experience depression and anxiety.
So friendship is basically a superpower. Sign me up.
It's certainly one of the most potent tools we have for improving our overall well-being. And it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. Having even just a few close, supportive friends can make a significant difference in our health and happiness.
This is all making me really appreciate my friends. But I'm curious about how these bonds form in the first place. Is it just about shared interests and spending time together, or is there something more going on?
There's actually a lot more to it than you might think. In fact, recent research suggests that our genes might play a role in who we choose as friends.
Wait, what? Are you telling me there's a genetic component to friendship?
There's growing evidence to support that idea. For example, one study found that friends are more genetically similar to each other than strangers, even when controlling for factors like ethnicity and geographic location.
So it's not just about birds of a feather flocking together based on shared interests. There might be a deeper biological attraction at play.
It seems that way. And this genetic similarity might actually contribute to that feeling of ease and understanding we experience with close friends.
So it's like our DNA is whispering to us, hey, this person is kind of like you. You should be friends.
It's a fascinating possibility. But it's not just about genetics. Our brains also seem to be wired to connect with people who share our values, our worldviews, and even our sense of humor.
This is all so mind-blowing. It's like friendship is this intricate dance of biology, psychology, and shared experiences. But if our genes play a role, does that mean we have no control over who we're friends with? Is it all predetermined?
Absolutely not. While our genes might create a certain predisposition, our choices and actions play a huge role in shaping our social circles. We have the power to seek out people who resonate with us, to nurture those connections, and to build the kinds of friendships we want in our lives.
So it's like a nature versus nurture situation. We have these innate tendencies, but we also have the power to cultivate the relationships that truly matter to us.
Exactly. And one of the keys to cultivating those deep, meaningful connections is something called vulnerability. It's about allowing ourselves to be seen, imperfections and all, and trusting that our friends will accept and support us for who we truly are.
Vulnerability. That sounds a bit scary. I mean, don't we all want to put our best foot forward, especially in new friendships?
We do, but there's a difference between presenting a polished version of ourselves and hiding behind a mask. True vulnerability is about letting down our guard, being authentic, and allowing our friends to see our strengths and our weaknesses.
Okay, I'm starting to see the difference. But why is vulnerability so important for friendship?
Vulnerability is the bridge to deeper intimacy. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with someone, we're essentially saying, I trust you enough to let you see me, even the parts I might not be proud of. And when that trust is reciprocated, it creates a profound sense of connection and belonging.
It's like you're letting someone into your inner world, and they're doing the same for you. That creates a really special kind of bond. But I'm curious, why are some people more comfortable with vulnerability than others? Is it just personality, or is there something more to it?
That's where we get into the fascinating realm of attachment theory, which suggests that our early childhood experiences, particularly our relationships with our primary caregivers, have a lasting impact on how we form and navigate relationships throughout our lives.
Attachment theory.
Yeah.
Is that like how we get attached to our phones? Just kidding. But seriously, I've heard that term before. Can you break it down for me? What exactly is attachment theory, and how does it relate to friendship?
Attachment theory basically proposes that our early experiences with caregivers shape our internal working models of relationships. These models influence how we perceive ourselves, how we view others, and how we approach intimacy and connection. And there are three main attachment styles: secure, avoidant, and anxious.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you tell me more about these attachment styles and how they might play out in friendships?
People with a secure attachment style tend to be comfortable with intimacy and closeness. They're generally trusting of others, don't fear abandonment, and are able to express their needs and emotions openly.
So they're the lucky ones who got the good relationship blueprint.
You could say that. They often have an easier time forming and maintaining healthy relationships because they approach them with a sense of security and confidence. But it's important to remember that attachment styles are not set in stone. They can evolve and change over time, especially through positive experiences and supportive relationships.
That's encouraging to hear. So what about the other two styles, avoidant and anxious? How do those play out in friendships?
People with an avoidant attachment style tend to be more distant and uncomfortable with emotional closeness. They might value independence and self-reliance to the point where they struggle to open up or rely on others, even close friends.
So they might keep people at arm's length, even in friendships.
That's a common pattern. They might fear getting hurt or being let down, so they protect themselves by keeping their emotions in check and avoiding situations that feel too intimate.
That sounds like a lonely way to approach friendship.
Yeah.
What about the anxious attachment style? What are those folks like in friendships?
People with an anxious attachment style crave closeness and connection, but they often fear abandonment and rejection. They might be overly dependent on their friends for reassurance and validation, which can sometimes lead to clinginess and neediness in the relationship.
So they might be the ones who are always texting, always wanting to hang out, and get really upset if their friend doesn't reciprocate that intensity.
Exactly. They're often hyper-aware of any signs of distance or rejection and might overanalyze their friends' behaviors, which can create tension and drama in the relationship.
Wow, this attachment theory stuff is really fascinating. It's like it's explaining so much about how we relate to each other, not just in romantic relationships, but in friendships too.
It's a powerful framework for understanding the dynamics of human connection, and it highlights the fact that we all come to friendship with different baggage, different anxieties, and different ways of expressing our needs.
So it's important to be mindful of those differences and to communicate openly and honestly about our needs and expectations.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's also about recognizing that not all friendships are meant to last forever. Just like people evolve and change, so do friendships.
That's true. I guess holding on to a friendship that's no longer serving us can actually prevent us from forming new, more fulfilling connections.
It's like making space in your garden for new plants to flourish. And speaking of the less rosy side of friendship, there are some common pitfalls that can derail even the strongest bonds. We'll explore those challenges as well as strategies for navigating them in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait to dig deeper into that. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of friendship. And for our listeners out there, I encourage you to reflect on your own friendships and consider the insights we've shared today.
It's all about becoming more aware of our own patterns, our needs, and how our past experiences might be influencing our present relationships. And with that awareness comes the power to choose the kinds of friendships we want to cultivate and to create the kind of social world that supports our well-being.
This has been an incredible start to our deep dive into the science of friendship. We've covered everything from the Dunbar number to attachment styles and the power of vulnerability. I can't wait to continue this exploration in our next segment. Welcome back to Podcast Infinity. We're continuing our deep dive into the fascinating world of friendship. Last time we uncovered the science behind how these bonds form and why they're so vital to our well-being. We even delved into the surprising role our genes and early childhood experiences play in shaping our social connections.
We explored some truly fascinating concepts like the Dunbar number, which suggests a cognitive limit to the number of meaningful relationships we can maintain, and attachment theory, which reveals how our early childhood experiences shape our approach to intimacy and connection.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing stuff. I felt like I was finally getting a glimpse behind the curtain of human behavior. But before we move on, I want to remind our listeners that they can find links to all the research we're discussing down in the description. So if you want to explore any of these concepts further, be sure to check those out.
Now let's shift gears a bit and explore some of the potential challenges that can arise in friendships.
Okay.
Because let's face it, even the best of friends can stumble upon those bumps in the road.
Okay, I'm all ears. Because while those early segments had me feeling all warm and fuzzy about friendship, I know it's not always sunshine and roses.
You're right. Friendship, like any relationship, requires work, understanding, and a willingness to navigate those inevitable moments of conflict and tension. And one of the first challenges we'll explore is competition and jealousy.
Ooh, that's a relatable one. I think we've all experienced that twinge of envy when a friend achieves something great, even though we're genuinely happy for them.
It's a natural human response. We're social creatures, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, especially those in our close circles. And when a friend succeeds in an area that's important to us, it can trigger those feelings of inadequacy or insecurity.
So it's like, on one hand, we're thrilled for our friend, but on the other hand, we're secretly thinking, why not me?
Exactly. And if we're not careful, those feelings of envy can fester and erode the foundation of the friendship.
So how do we handle those feelings of competition and jealousy in a healthy way? Do we just pretend they're not there?
Ignoring them is rarely the answer. Instead, it's about acknowledging those feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and finding healthy ways to process them.
So like maybe journaling about it, talking to a therapist, or even confiding in a different friend who's not involved in the situation.
Those are all great options. And sometimes it's also helpful to reframe our perspective. Instead of viewing a friend's success as a threat, we can try to see it as inspiration.
That's a good point. It's like, instead of feeling threatened by their achievements, we can use them as motivation to pursue our own goals.
Exactly. And by celebrating our friends' successes authentically, we strengthen the bond rather than letting envy create a divide.
Okay, competition and jealousy, check. What's another common challenge friendships face?
One-sided friendships are another big one. These are those relationships where one person consistently gives more than they receive. It can be emotionally draining and can lead to resentment over time.
Oh, I've definitely been there. It's like you're always the one initiating contact, making plans, and offering support. but it's rarely reciprocated.
It can feel like you're carrying the weight of the friendship on your own. And while it's natural for there to be some ebb and flow in any relationship, a persistent imbalance is a red flag.
So how do you know if you're in a one-sided friendship? What are some signs to look out for?
One clue is that you consistently feel drained or depleted after spending time with this friend. Another is that you're always the one reaching out, making plans, and initiating conversations.
And what about when you need support? Are they there for you in the same way you're there for them?
That's a crucial point. If you find that your needs are consistently overlooked or minimized, while your friend's needs always seem to take center stage, that's another sign of imbalance.
So what can you do if you realize you're in a one-sided friendship? Do you just cut the person off?
Not necessarily. Sometimes simply becoming aware of the dynamic is enough to shift things. You can start by setting boundaries, communicating your needs more clearly, and being more mindful of how much you're giving versus receiving.
So it's about asserting yourself and making sure your needs are met too.
Exactly. And if your friend is genuinely invested in the friendship, they'll be receptive to those conversations and willing to make adjustments.
But what if they're not? What if they continue to take and take without giving anything back?
That's when you have to make a tough decision about whether this friendship is truly serving you. Sometimes it's healthier to step back from a relationship that's draining your energy and causing you more stress than joy.
That's a hard truth. But it's important to remember that we deserve to be in relationships that are reciprocal and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And sometimes letting go of a one-sided friendship creates space for new, more balanced relationships to enter our lives.
Okay, we've talked about competition and jealousy, and we've discussed the challenges of one-sided friendships. What other pitfalls should we be aware of?
Though unfortunately, not all friendships are healthy or supportive. Sometimes we find ourselves in friendships that involve controlling or manipulative behaviors.
Ooh, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. What are some examples of controlling or manipulative behavior in friendships?
It can manifest in many ways. One example is a friend who constantly tries to guilt you into doing things you don't want to do, or who makes you feel bad for having other friends or interests outside of the friendship.
So it's like they want to monopolize your time and attention.
Exactly. Another red flag is a friend who constantly puts you down or undermines your confidence. They might disguise these jabs as jokes or teasing, but the underlying message is clear. They want to keep you feeling small so they can maintain control.
That's so toxic. It's like they're trying to dim your light so they can shine brighter.
And then there are the friends who are constantly gossiping or spreading rumors. They might try to pit you against other friends or create drama within your social circle.
It's like they thrive on chaos and negativity.
And unfortunately, these kinds of friendships can be incredibly damaging because they erode trust, create self-doubt, and can even lead to social isolation.
So what can you do if you realize you're in a friendship with someone who exhibits these behaviors?
The first step is to recognize that these behaviors are not acceptable. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and you don't have to tolerate manipulation or emotional abuse.
That's a powerful reminder. But how do you confront someone about these behaviors? It seems like it would be a really difficult conversation to have.
It can be challenging, but it's important to set clear boundaries and communicate your expectations. You might say something like, "I feel uncomfortable when you talk about me behind my back. I value our friendship, but I need you to respect my boundaries."
And if they don't respect those boundaries, what if they continue with the manipulative behavior?
Then you have to make a tough decision about whether this friendship is worth salvaging. Sometimes the best course of action is to distance yourself from someone who is repeatedly violating your trust and causing you emotional harm.
It's like that saying, you teach people how to treat you. If you allow someone to walk all over you, they'll keep doing it.
Exactly. And remember, walking away from a toxic friendship is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength and self-respect.
This whole conversation about the challenges of friendship has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the romantic ideal of friendship, but it's important to be aware of the potential pitfalls and to develop the skills to navigate them effectively.
And sometimes that navigation involves making difficult choices, like setting boundaries, confronting uncomfortable behaviors, or even walking away from a friendship that's no longer serving us.
But even though friendship can be challenging at times, the rewards are immeasurable. Those deep, meaningful connections enrich our lives in countless ways.
They provide us with support, laughter, companionship, and a sense of belonging. They help us through tough times, celebrate our victories, and make life's journey a little brighter.
So it's all about finding that balance, right? Being aware of the potential challenges while also cherishing the incredible gift of friendship.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this segment of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a few final thoughts on navigating those friendship challenges.
Okay, lay it on us. What are some key takeaways for building and maintaining healthy friendships?
First, remember that communication is key. Be open and honest with your friends about your needs, your expectations, and your feelings.
So don't be afraid to have those tough conversations.
Exactly. Second, remember that boundaries are essential. It's okay to say no, to set limits on how much you're willing to give, and to protect your own well-being.
So it's not selfish to prioritize your own needs.
Not at all. Healthy friendships are about mutual respect and consideration. And finally, remember that you deserve to be in relationships that bring you joy, support, and a sense of belonging. Don't settle for anything less.
Those are words to live by. This has been such an insightful and thought-provoking conversation. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for navigating the complexities of friendship.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some strategies for strengthening those existing bonds, cultivating new connections, and creating a social world that supports our overall well-being.
Welcome back to Podcast Infinity. For this final part of our deep dive into the science of friendship, we're going to be shifting gears. From navigating those complexities and challenges we were talking about, to exploring how we can nurture those fulfilling bonds, cultivate new connections, and create a social world that truly supports our well-being.
Yeah, building on what we've talked about so far, about the science behind friendship, we'll be translating those insights into some actionable strategies.
Okay. So after all that talk about Dunbar numbers, attachment styles, and even, the potential pitfalls of friendship, let's talk about what we can actually do to build and maintain those positive connections. I'm ready to get practical.
Okay, well, one of the most effective yet often overlooked strategies is simply being present.
Okay.
I mean, in our fast-paced, digitally driven world, it's so easy to get caught up in all the distractions and forget to truly connect with the people right in front of us.
So put down the phone, close the laptop, and actually engage in those face-to-face conversations.
Exactly. Make eye contact, listen attentively, and really focus on, being present in the moment with your friend. It's those small gestures of presence that convey care, respect, and a genuine interest in the other person.
It's like that saying, be present. That's the present.
I love that. And building on that idea of presence, another powerful strategy is active listening. Okay? It's not just about hearing the words your friend is saying. It's about truly listening to understand their perspective, their emotions, and their needs.
So it's about putting aside our own thoughts and judgments and really trying to step into their shoes.
Precisely. Active listening involves paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues, asking clarifying questions, and, reflecting back what you've heard to ensure you're truly understanding their message. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but really actively engaging with what they're saying and trying to make them feel heard and understood.
Yeah, like you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, you're actively engaging with what they're saying and trying to make them feel heard and understood.
Exactly. And that feeling of being heard and understood is essential for fostering intimacy and trust in any relationship, especially in friendships.
Okay, being present, active listening, check. What else can we do to strengthen those existing bonds?
Well, another key ingredient is shared experiences. Remember that study we discussed about students perceiving a hill as less steep when they were with a friend?
Yes. It was a great example of how social support can literally change our perception of the world.
Exactly. Shared experiences, whether they're big adventures or simple everyday moments, create a sense of connection and, shared history. They give you something to reminisce about, to laugh about, to bond over.
So it's about, making time for those activities that bring you joy and allow you to connect on a deeper level.
Exactly. It could be anything from going on a hike together, to trying a new restaurant, to simply curling up on the couch and watching a movie. It's about prioritizing that quality time and making memories together.
And don't underestimate the power of, small gestures of kindness and appreciation.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a simple thank you note, a thoughtful gift, or even just a text message saying, I'm thinking of you, can go a long way in nurturing a friendship.
Absolutely. Those little acts of love that, remind our friends that we value them and appreciate their presence in our lives.
And speaking of appreciation, another important aspect of nurturing friendships is celebrating each other's successes.
Yes. Remember the discussion about competition and jealousy.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about how it's important to reframe our perspective and view our friends' achievements as inspiration rather than a threat.
Exactly. When we genuinely celebrate our friends' successes, we strengthen the bond and foster a sense of mutual support and encouragement.
It's like their wins are our wins and our wins are their wins. We're on this journey of life together, cheering each other on along the way.
Beautifully said. And sometimes nurturing a friendship also involves having those tough conversations when, conflicts or issues arise.
Yes, we talked about the importance of communication and setting boundaries when we were discussing the challenges of friendship.
Exactly. But even in those difficult conversations, it's important to approach them with compassion, understanding, and a willingness to see things from your friend's perspective.
So it's not about attacking or blaming. It's about expressing your feelings and needs in a respectful and constructive way. Precisely. And remember, conflict doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can actually be an opportunity to strengthen the bond by, working through issues together and deepening your understanding of each other.
Yeah, so it's like you're weathering the storm together, and that shared experience can make the friendship even stronger.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about cultivating new connections.
Okay.
Because even if we have a solid group of friends, it's always beneficial to expand our social circles and welcome new people into our lives.
Okay. I'm all for making new friends, but sometimes it feels a bit daunting, especially as we get older. Where do you even start?
Well, one of the best ways to meet new people is to pursue your interests and passions.
Okay.
Join a club, take a class, volunteer for a cause you care about, or attend events that align with your hobbies.
So it's about putting yourself out there and engaging in activities that bring you joy.
Exactly. And when you're doing something you love, you're more likely to attract like-minded people who share your interests and values.
It's like you're creating a magnetic field that draws in people who vibe with you.
I love that analogy. And remember, friendships don't always form overnight. It takes time to build trust, rapport, and, that sense of connection.
So be patient, be persistent, and keep putting yourself out there.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to initiate conversations, extend invitations, and, make the first move. Remember that other people might be just as nervous or hesitant about making new friends as you are.
So take a chance, be bold, and see what happens. You never know what amazing connections are waiting to be discovered. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground, the science, the challenges, and now, all these practical tips for building and maintaining those all-important friendships. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate their own social landscapes?
Just remember, friendship is a gift, a source of strength, and a journey worth taking. Invest in those connections, be present, communicate openly, and never underestimate the power of shared laughter, support, and understanding.
This is Podcast Infinity signing off.